Actually, I think my record's so far on the longest single trip. I think I did left on July the 14th from Kentucky. July the 14th, and now it's August the 30th. So on one single trip, with the summertime. So I left Kentucky July the 14th, I believe it was, and did a 2,000-mile drive in the southwest of the United States, visiting some of the places we can't usually, we don't get to so often, plus some of our normal places. Funeral also at that time. One of our parishioners died in Phoenix, and we would drive through and take care of the funeral at that time. Then flew to Australia, visited about 150 faithful in Australia, and which is about 2/3, or 3/4 of the faithful of Australia, of the whole resistance, and then visited India, and about 400 there. We didn't go to all the places I wanted to go to, but just to visit only a few places, but still was able to visit some of the people in India. And then to the Philippines, and then in the Philippines, was there a couple of weeks. A couple of seminarians came from Kentucky, from California. A couple of our seminarians. It's summertime, there were 7 seminarians, 6 seminarians and a brother. 2 of the seminarians were Father Hugo on his little trip in the month of August. A little boys' camp trip just finished last week. And then 2 seminarians came to the Philippines and traveled around with me to the places in the Philippines. We were not able to get down to the island of of Mindanao, where I was hoping to see my brother and visit some of our people down there in that island, but it just wasn't possible. It takes a while to move from place to place in the Philippines, so we weren't able to go to every place. But all together, and then to England, just here, and then was to just London and up in the Suffolk and Orford near the ocean there, and then here, and so all together so far visited about a little more than 700 faithful of the resistance in those places, and was only able to see a few priests, 3 priests in India, 4 priests in India, and then. Met a little bit with Father Pico in the Philippines, and then on the trip, Father Giselle and Father Pico were. Father Giselle was out because his father was sick, and he had to go out in the early part of the month, so I didn't see him at all, and then he doesn't come back until around September the 2nd or 3rd, and I think right now he might be visiting Australia, but in any case. He instructed the people to basically not receive me, and so they had the unwelcome wagon repaired, and so they weren't to receive me in their houses, or weren't to go to my mass, or weren't to receive my mass. And remember, I'm a priest of Asia. I was stationed there, and still officially stationed there. That's why I keep the white cassock and the red cincture, because I'm still stationed a priest of Asia. 2012, when I was expelled from the society, I was expelled from Asia. They don't consider that expulsion worth the paper it's written on. It's an invalid expulsion, so I'm still a priest of Asia. And so as a result, I told the people there in 2012, and intend to maintain that commitment, that since I'm a priest of Asia, I will continue to visit the people there, and have each year, usually 2 or 3 times. This year, only the first time, to get back to Asia was this time. And so visiting some of the people, and we established the resistance movement over there in Asia back in 2012. Father Giselle and myself establishing the missions there, then establishing the missions in the United States. And now there is a division that's become visible in the last year. And, you say we all have a free will. They have a free will, but I also have a free will. We're the only ones with the free will. And I really don't accept the division. As far as I'm concerned, our unity is in faith, and any other battles aren't really that important. So as I traveled over to Australia, and then to India, and then to the Philippines to see the people, Father Giselle put in his latest letter, he called it the Pfeiffer attack, in Australia. Now, when I visited before, they were Pfeiffer visits, and now they're Pfeiffer attacks. And it's the same Pfeiffer, more or less the same size, and the same teaching, same everything. No real changes in what I've been doing. Before they were causes of happiness, now they're causes of unhappiness. And in fact, what that's a sign of is there is a change happening. The change is happening in those that are beginning to change their doctrine. When I was ordained a priest 22 years ago, I said the same thing that I'm saying now, which is New Mass bad, Vatican II bad, the Latin Mass good, Catholic teaching good, the Sedevacantism bad, modernism bad, and then we stand with the position of Archbishop Lefebvre to spread the social kingship of our Lord Jesus Christ, to bring souls back to Christ with the true faith. And that's it. And so that when Father Yuko and myself go around, the other priests doing the same thing, in advance, you already know what we're going to say. Same thing we said last time. There's not going to be any alteration. It's going to be the same doctrine, the same faith. And we hope to be able to maintain that until death. But that's not possible without the grace of God. So any of us can fall off the wagon. Any of us can fall away from the faith. But we hope that we don't. And we intend to persevere in the faith. And right now, up to this moment, we have. It's a fact that we have. We're teaching the same faith. However, we're finding other priests are changing. Hence the cause of the conflict. You know that one of the arguments is being made right now is that there's a conflict within the resistance. In fact, it's a repetition of what they said in 2012 in the United States and also in Asia. And that is, they said in 2012 that everybody in the Society of St. Pius X is overfilled with joy, love, and happiness with Bishop Pfeiffer. And everybody is fulfilled with joy, love, and happiness about everything going on in the society except for Father Pfeiffer. And Father Pfeiffer gave this sermon in the Philippines in May 27, 2012, and started a rebellion. And it's only because of him that everybody in the world is unhappy. Which is interesting. It's given a lot of power to Father Pfeiffer, but it's completely and totally absurd. The fact is that the people are not unhappy because Father Pfeiffer told them to be unhappy. The people were unhappy in Germany, where Father Pfeiffer never was, in South America, where Father Pfeiffer never was, and even in the United States, where I was, the vast majority of the people that joined us in the resistance were never my parishioners or even on retreat with me. I didn't preach retreats in the United States, and even the people who came to the United States, the vast majority of them were not my parishioners, didn't go on retreat with me, and maybe they knew me, maybe they didn't. But they didn't join because of Father Pfeiffer. The reason there was a trouble in 2012 was because Bishop Pfeiffer and the mainstream Society of St. Pius X taught a new doctrine and went in a new direction and made it publicly clear to the whole world. And what they said was that we are going to make a union with modernist Rome. We want that as a miracle, miraculous thing. Bishop Pfeiffer is just talking about it again yesterday. He's still waiting for the miracle, waiting for the miracle, waiting for the miracle, and waiting for the miracle. And the miracle is going to happen anytime soon. Just wait for the miracle, and it's going to happen. And he's been waiting for the miracle since 2001. And it's been urgent for him since 2001. It's now 2016. Maybe he needs to reconsider that perhaps it's not a miracle, and perhaps there's some people deceiving him in Rome. He hasn't figured that out yet. Nonetheless, he's waiting for the miracle. He was waiting for the miracle in 2012. He's waiting for the miracle now in 2016. Just making his little statement just a few days ago in a conference on the 24th. And he's been making multiple conferences that we're going to accept this deal with Rome, the deal with Rome, the deal with Rome. He spoke about it back in 2012. Speaking about it now in 2016. He's been ready for it from the beginning. And then it's not so much the deal with Rome as a deal that's the problem. It's the fact that they've accepted a new faith. And we say, look, they're saying Vatican II remains tainted with errors. That's what it said in the document of 2012. July the 14th. Vatican II remains tainted with errors. The public document of the general statement of the general chapter, which means it's not an error. It's only a taint of error. And they're no longer condemning the council as heretical. And then we bind ourselves to be willing to be under the modernists. And we're not going to criticize modernism anymore, but only those people who are responsible for whatever these bad things that happen. And so there's a major change of faith. Hence the complaints of 2012. What do they say? Well, it's a Father Pfeiffer problem. Now we're in 2016. And in 2016, we find that just like it was said in 2012, Vatican II remains tainted with errors, which means that there's a stain, a leftover of error, but the error is not there. So now, in our times, 4 years later, which by the standards of today might as well be 40 years later, because time moves faster now. And that now we find that Bishop Williamson and the priests who are trying to justify him are saying that the new Mass is tainted with evil. It's the crude way of saying it in America, where they say, SSDD. Same crap, different day. Now, the fact is, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So now, what we find is that the statement is, from now coming from Bishop Williamson, before it was coming from Bishop Pfeiffer, and the statement is that the new Mass can benefit your soul. And if you feel it benefits your soul, you can use it to benefit your soul, and grace is going to come from that new Mass. Which is the same thing as saying new Mass is legitimately promulgated back in 2012. And the new church can benefit your soul if you think it benefits your soul. If you feel it benefits your soul, you can benefit from the new church. And you can't say the new church is all bad. Which is the same thing as saying that 95% of the council is wonderful. There's a lot of similarities between Bishop Pfeiffer's statements that 95% of the council is wonderful, we accept it 100%, and only 5% is misunderstood. And 5% is taken out of context. And 5% is dangerous. And 5% might even be bad, perhaps. Now, we find Bishop Williamson saying, I'm not in favor of the new Mass, but essentially it's 95% good. Essentially, you can benefit from it. It's just that in general, it can be bad. And for the most part, it's bad. But in fact, it can be good. And now there was a confusion. Back in 2012, they said that, did you talk to Bishop Pfeiffer? Did you ask him what he meant by legitimately promulgated? Did you talk to Bishop Pfeiffer? Did you ask him what he meant by tainted with errors? I spoke with our superior, Father Couture. I was not able to speak directly to Bishop Pfeiffer about those particular points, so I spoke about the things beforehand. And so so that they say, well, are you understanding what did you talk to him? I talked to him, and he said he didn't mean that. Bishop Pfeiffer said in public that we need to make a deal with Rome. Bishop said in public that we love Pope Benedict, and we need to be with Pope Benedict, and we've got to be with Rome. But in private, he said to me, I was there. I talked to him privately last week, and he told me, we're never going to make a deal with Rome. And he told the public something different. Now we come 4 years later. Bishop Williamson says in public, the new Mass is acceptable. The new Mass can save your soul. There are miracles in the new Mass. I talked to him last week, and he told me privately that that's just not what he meant. Did you ask him what he meant? Yes, we asked him what he meant. So he wrote 5 letters and comments about it. And he writes more about it. Even the one that just came a couple of days, yesterday or Saturday, or just a couple of days ago, he writes about the Novus Ordo Mass. The Novus Ordo Mass. He says, those who think that the author of these comments said the Novus Ordo Mass is essentially good, need to understand that we're distinguishing between the judging of the error and the one that commits the error. And that, that not necessarily saying that it's good. And then he says nothing about the new Mass. And he goes into a quote of a parishioner who wrote, he said, the people of the new Mass are bad. So in the first part he says that it must distinguish between the error and the one erring. And the church is hard on the error and soft on the individual, which is correct, that's good. Then he has a comment that says the people of the new Mass are bad and unworthy of being forgiven. That's the opposite of what he says in the beginning. So in fact, it just adds to the confusion. Doesn't bring any more clarity. It doesn't retract the statements. Just like Bishop Pfeiffer didn't retract his. He kept writing new things, stating new things, repeating the same doctrine as before. And some would say, well, he said something that sounded conservative this week. Like, for instance, June 29th, 2016, just a little while ago, many people interpreted the statement of the superiors of the Society of St. Pius X as a statement that says that we're not going to have a deal with Rome. Then on July the 29th, we find a statement And the statement says that society has accepted the deal with Rome. And then in August, we got a statement that says we're being offered a most wonderful deal. It's just a wonderful thing. And so that's June, July, and August. The saga continues. Now we find the same thing with Bishop Williamson. Same exact thing. We're going to repeat that the new Mass is good. There are really miracles in the new Mass. The souls in the new Mass are truly benefiting from the new church. And that if you feel it benefits your soul, it benefits your soul. And that doesn't mean the new Mass is good. That doesn't mean that it's as good as the old Mass. And if you think I'm saying the new Mass is good, then you're misunderstanding me. It's the same thing. Saying something that is apparently contradictory, but it's not. And repeating the same error over again. And the result is the same also. Confusion amongst the people. Our Lord Jesus Christ said, let your yes be yes, and let your no be no. And the Archbishop Lefebvre, one of our prisoners in Canada, again found this, again, it's time and time again. Archbishop Lefebvre was very clear. The new Mass does not give grace. The new Mass does not benefit your soul. And one quote from Open Letter to Confused Catholics, probably the most famous book of all of Archbishop Lefebvre's books. This new Mass is in a desperate case. It cannot transmit grace. No grace comes from it. And at the end, there's a little thing called a period. Period. No grace comes from it. Now, if grace did come from it, what would that mean? It would mean you need to go to the Mass to get that grace. You don't have the right to stay away from the fount of grace. And if the new Mass is a font of grace, you've got to go to it. It's not a font of grace. And the proof's in the pudding. 1 billion Catholics walking away from God in the last 50 years. And so we know by what it says and does, it doesn't give grace. And we know by the practice, what has happened, that it doesn't give grace. And we're arguing about it and discussing it. And so we're finding the same problem. Then what are they saying now in 2016? The whole problem is Father Pfeiffer, because everybody in the whole world is happy with Bishop Williamson. Everybody in the whole world is happy with everything going on in resistance. The priests are just jumping with joy and glee, and everyone is getting along, and everything is just wonderful, except for that Boston, Kentucky, and a horrible priest over there, and the idiot that's following him, because even though he's holy, he's got no brains. And that's Father Hugo. And so that the fact is, Father Hugo is just a puppy following, and Father Pfeiffer is a tyrant, judging everyone and condemning everyone to hell and forbidding everybody's. And the whole trouble is the person of Father Pfeiffer. Now remember that even if Father Pfeiffer was a bad priest, he doesn't have that kind of power. So you have a free will, and you're not the only ones. Turns out that out of the 7 billion people on earth, approximately 7 billion of them have free wills. And not one of them is going to, they're not going to just follow Father Pfeiffer. They have to decide whether they're going to follow the truth or the error. Are they going to follow Christ or the devil? And each one has to make their own decision. Now it's our duty to communicate the truth. There's no need to change that truth. I've got nothing against Bishop Williamson. I've got nothing against my fellow priests. And guess what? It's not true, just like it wasn't in 2012. It wasn't Father Pfeiffer. There were many priests throughout the entire world who said no to this modernism. And they were thrown out of the society. And they were thrown off. And there was like 100 of us. Now they're saying, and now there's only a few of us, so out of that 100, and most are kind of not well known. So out of that 100, they're saying, now within that 100, everybody's happy with Bishop Williamson. Everybody's working together. Everybody is madly in love, holding hands, except for Father Pfeiffer. No, that's not true. The fact is that the priests, Father Cardozo, Father Jackman, Father Ruiz, Father Rivas, and I'm not going to mention every name, Father Demerode, etc., Father King, many priests, in fact the majority, don't agree with Bishop Williamson's statements. We'll say the vast majority don't agree. And he's speaking truth when he says new Mass gives grace. And when he says that it will benefit your soul if you feel it does. They recognize that these statements are wrong. Some say, like with Father Giselle and Father Pico and some of the others, they say, well, there are miracles in the new Mass. So we'll grant the miracles, we won't grant the conclusion of the miracles, which is the proof the new Mass is good. So we grant the miracles, which are the proof. We don't accept the conclusion of the proof. It's not logical, but we're not required to be logical all the time. But eventually logic wins out. And the truth is, there cannot be miracles in the new Mass. And then Bishop Williamson says, it's just my opinion. Well, if it's just his opinion, he should allow someone else to have another opinion. If it's a matter of dogma, then let us be condemned. If it's a matter of opinion, then let us hold another one. Then we have the behavior of the three bishops. And the three bishops, Bishop Ford, Bishop Williamson, they said, we have the bishops on our side, say some of these priests. Where were the bishops? We need the bishops. What we need is Christ, and what we need is a true faith. Bishops are replaceable. Turns out they're all going to die. Now, they'll be bishops forever. They'll maintain the priesthood forever. But they're not going to be able to influence the church forever. God is going to have bishops who have the true faith and profess that true faith. Now, the bishops say that, we accept that there's miracles in the new Mass. Bishop Thomas Aquinas had to say that before he became bishop. Bishop Ford had to back it up in order to show his loyalty to Bishop Williamson. And the three bishops, therefore, are teaching that which is erroneous. So we simply say, no, that's not right. It's not right. We need bishops who are going to have and profess the Holy Roman Catholic faith. And we need bishops that are going to do their duty before God. In fact, that means in practice, in our times, imitating Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre, who just imitated the saints that came before him, but still imitating Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre. Clearly and simply communicate the true faith, clearly and simply condemn the errors, and clearly and simply bring Christ to souls. They have lots of conditions. So, Bishop Thomas Aquinas writes a letter to myself, or to Father Hugo, addressed to both myself and Father Hugo. You have criticized Bishop Williamson. This has consequences. Therefore, no holy oils. You cannot even come and visit me in my monastery, and we're cut off. Cut off for criticizing the person. This is another thing that's quite similar to 2012. In 2012, we were told, you're criticizing Bishop Fillet. You can disagree in private, and you can talk to him in private. Now, 4 years later, I hear, you can disagree with Bishop Williamson in private. I've heard that before. You can disagree with him in private. I talked to him in private, and he didn't yell at me. So it can't be, one priest told me recently, I told the bishop I don't agree with him, and he didn't yell at me. So he obviously isn't upset with you, Father Pfeiffer, because you disagree with him. It's because of something else. It's because of Bishop Ambrose. It's because of Paul the Mexican. It's because of the bad seminary. It's because of how wicked and judgmental you are, and so on. Well, these human problems don't explain anything. First of all, most of them are not true. Right? But nonetheless, it's irrelevant. The battle is the battle of the faith. And when you can't fight on the grounds of faith, what do? You switch to a personal attack. This is the method of the devil. Switch to a personal attack. We don't need to bother with personal attacks. We're not in the business of defending our person. We're in the business of defending the person of our Lord Jesus Christ. We're in the business of defending His Holy Mother, the Church. We're in the business of defending the faith. And it's not expedient to defend ourselves. And furthermore, if someone doesn't like Father Pfeiffer, that's fine. You don't have to like Father Pfeiffer to go to heaven. It's not a requirement. So therefore, if some of these priests will say, don't go to Father Pfeiffer's Mass, like they did when I was traveling over in Asia, Father Giselle and Father Pico spread the word, don't go to Father Pfeiffer's Mass, don't receive Father Pfeiffer. The people received it in me anyway. But nonetheless, don't receive Father Pfeiffer, don't go to his Mass. They're afraid, guess what they told me? They're afraid of being refused the sacraments. Man, that's familiar. Sounds really familiar. Because just a couple of years ago, we visit people and they say, if you come and say Mass for me, Father, if I go to your Mass, I might be refused Holy Communion by Father Toke. He's got the record. He refused 30 people Holy Communion over in Australia. And so we might be refused Holy Communion. We might be refused, even got a case of refusing Catholic burial. We might be refused the sacraments. And now, 4 years later, if you criticize Bishop Williamson, if we go to your Mass, Father Pfeiffer, we might be rejected by Bishop Williamson. We might be rejected by the priests who say we can't have anything to do with Father Pfeiffer because he's criticizing Bishop Williamson publicly. We don't agree with him either. Doesn't that sound familiar? I don't agree with Bishop Fillet. And does that sound familiar? I don't agree with Pope Paul VI. I don't agree with my local bishop, but I'm not a bishop. I'm not a pope, so I'm going to have to go along with it, and I'm going to work quietly within my diocese. I'm going to work quietly within my parish in order to fight against the liberalism of Pope Paul VI, and to fight against the liberalism of my local bishop from within. Then, why don't you stay in your post? Why don't you pull the priests together? Why don't you fight from within the Society of St. Pius X? Just go back to your place and fight. All you have to do in order to fight is don't criticize. Don't say anything publicly. Stay in your own little parish and fight. How is that fighting? How is that fighting? To fight, you must communicate the truth. And as Catholics, this truth of faith must be communicated publicly. Like the example today, St. Felix. He was quite public about his faith and got his head chopped off for it. And we have several millions of examples down the last 2,000 years of those who have had to stand publicly for their faith, and it turned out emperors didn't like it, turned out bishops didn't like it, turned out popes didn't like it, turned out many people in the world didn't like it, leading to their martyrdom or to their excommunication or to their expulsion and their various, or to their being despised and cast out in one way or another. This has happened for 2,000 years. Somehow we think that we're going to be different. We're going to have to operate differently than the saints did. We can't operate differently. We have to do the same. We have to do the same. So our battle isn't that complicated. And then, of course, what do they say? You're all divided amongst yourselves. Why is anybody going to join the resistance? Because you're all fighting each other. Does that sound familiar? Go back to the 1970s and the 1980s and the 1990s and throughout the entire time of the strength of the SSPX. You traditional Catholics were all fighting each other. Some say he's the Pope, some say he's not the Pope. Some of you guys that are fighting over the parishes, and you're fighting over the people, and you're calling each other sinners and heretics and wicked, and you're saying, don't go to that priest mass, and don't go to that priest mass. I want nothing to do with tradition. And so there have been fights between priests in the last 40 years since Vatican II. Is that a shock? Well, if you read the Gospel, it isn't. Because our Lord Jesus Christ said, if the shepherd is smitten, the sheep will scatter. The shepherd is the Pope. He's been smitten. And so therefore the sheep will scatter. Therefore we should not be scandalized that the sheep scatter. We don't pay attention to which sheep are with which other sheep, but rather which sheep are following the shepherd. And most sheep will scatter, but some sheep will still find the shepherd. Some sheep will still follow the shepherd until the very end of time. And therefore our focus must be on following the shepherd, hearing his voice, the one true Holy Roman Catholic faith. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed at all. And so, when we hear a new doctrine that's different, we follow the rule that St. Paul gave to us. If you hear that which is different, let him be anathema. Now, who's changed? What's changed? We have the same teaching from the beginning of the founding of the SSPX until today. I have the same beliefs that I had since my birth, and the same beliefs I had since I entered the Society of St. Pius X, and have saying no need to change those beliefs. And I can follow the same teaching that I had in the seminary, and I can even follow the same statutes. Now we find priests in the resistance that say, we're going to find a better way than Archbishop Lefebvre. We're going to find a better way. Because Archbishop Pfeiffer was a good man. Listen to the magic words. For his time. Now that sounds very familiar, doesn't it? For his time. There was a saint 100 years ago who wrote an encyclical 110 years ago, 109 years ago, called Pascendi, against the heresy of modernism. And he says that one of the hallmarks of modernism, it's evolution is all it is, the heresy of evolution. And he says that modernism is to believe that everything was right for that time. Trent was right for the time of 1550. And Vatican I was right for the time of 1870. And Vatican II was right for 1965 and beyond. Truth changes. There were things that were right back then, but they may not apply now, because the times they are a-changing. That's called modernism. So what do we hear within the resistance? Archbishop Lefebvre did the best he could for his day. For his day. Isn't that familiar? For his time. Well, that time is past. No, it isn't. Because Archbishop Lefebvre, though he was a great saint of our times, he wasn't really that special. All he did was say exactly what St. Pius I said. What St. Peter said. All he did was act exactly as the bishops act before him for 2,000 or 1,900 years. He wasn't that special. He was just another Catholic bishop following the practice and teaching of Catholic bishops who remained faithful to Christ during the 1,900 years before he was born. That's all. And we must be the same. We must be the same. But what do we say? He was good for his time. That sounds like modernism. Guess what? It is modernism. The times have changed. We hear also, we're in a new battle. We're in a new battle. It's the same thing, different way of saying it. We're in a new battle. We are seeing things that have never been seen before. And we forget that Solomon, who was very wise and inspired by the Holy Ghost, told us, Nihil novum sub sole. And the Holy Ghost said that. There is nothing new under the sun. We're still under the sun. Guess what? There's nothing new. No new heresies. In fact, even modernism is not a new heresy. It's found in the sacred scripture. It's found in the Old and New Testament. Pilate was a modernist. And so it's not a new heresy. There's no new thing. The devil is still just as wicked as he always was, and God is still as good as he always was. And all we must do is hand down what we have received. So they say in 2012, it's just a few disgruntled priests. Now they say in 2016, it's just a few disgruntled priests. These guys have been in trouble since the very beginning. You know, he's always been a troublemaker. He's always been a problem. And now he's a problem today. These words have been spoken before many, many times. What's the problem? The problem is not Father Pfeiffer. The problem is not Father Giselle. The problem is not the priests of the resistance. The problem is those in authority who are not preaching the truth, and not only are not preaching the truth, they're positively preaching error. That's the problem. And these things are causes of division. The division is not caused by someone who says, you should not say new Mass good. The division is caused by the one who says new Mass good. Nothing against Bishop Williamson personally, but he is a cause of division when he says that the new Mass gives grace, when he says that there are miracles in the new Mass, which are the proof that there is good in the Mass, and that grace comes from it when it's valid, contrary to the teaching of St. Augustine, who lived far before Bishop Williamson, and who was a very holy bishop from 1,600 years ago, and I will believe St. Augustine before I believe Bishop Williamson. Much as I love Bishop Williamson as the father of my priesthood, Augustine wins. When I hear Augustine say one thing and Williamson say another, I follow Augustine. And that's what St. Bernard told me to do. 800, 600 years after Augustine died, St. Bernard said, "Who is this new teacher?" in his letter 77. "I stand on the shoulders of my fathers. I stand on the shoulders of Augustine. I stand on the shoulders of Ambrose. And don't listen to these new teachers. Stand on the shoulders of your fathers." That's what St. Bernard told me to do, and that's what I have to do as a priest of God. Stand on the shoulders of St. Augustine and St. Ambrose. And St. Augustine says that there is a schismatic mass, or a mass of a heretic, that is cut off from the church. And he's talking about the true mass. There was no new mass back in 430 AD. When there's a mass that's cut off from the church, there is no grace that flows from it. It is likened to a branch, that if you cut a branch off and lay it on the ground, and compare it to a branch in the tree, you will see that they look the same, says Augustine. But one is connected to the root of life, and the other one is dead. And though it looks like the other branch, it seems to be identical to the other branch, no life comes from it. And so is the mass of the schismatic and the heretic and those that are cut off from the church. And it applies to the conciliar mass. Augustine knows better. We follow him. So there's no need to have a new teaching. No need to have a new explanation. And then we're going to try to get together and create a new kind of organization. So now some of the priests are going to get together and they're going to create a new kind of organization. An organization that will not function as dioceses have functioned for the last 2,000 years. That will not function as religious orders have functioned for the last 2,000 years. It's going to be better. What is that called? Evolution. What's another name? Evolution can also be spelled starting with the letter M. Modernism. Modernism, evolution. The only difference between those two heresies is the spelling. They're the same. They are exactly the same. Evolution equals modernism. Modernism equals evolution. And both are called by St. Pius X the sewer. The grand sewer. The collection of all heresies. So, we can't go along with that. Now we know that many souls are confused. That's unfortunate. But the truth is not confused. The truth is simple. The truth is clear. And the truth is that we can't accept New Mass good. We can't accept Vatican II good. And even when you mitigate it, and you try to say it's not really that good, it's only a little bit good. No, it's no good. It's no good. Not of God. And that there are souls that are going to go to heaven. God gives a grace to every soul to go to heaven. And we know that those souls that are in the new church, and those souls in other churches also, God gives to all of them the grace to save their souls. And if they repent, and if they accept the true faith, and enter into the true Holy Roman Catholic Church, and die with the true Holy Roman Catholic faith and charity in their souls, they go to heaven. And if they don't, they go to hell. But none of them can be saved by any false church. None of them can be saved in any false church, including the new conciliar church. They're Catholic, they die Catholic, they go to heaven. They're conciliar in their hearts, they're conciliar in their minds. If they die conciliar, they go to hell. Only God knows which ones are conciliar and which ones are Catholic. It's not for us to judge. But we do know that whoever is truly following the council is truly following the devil and cannot be saved. Whoever is truly following Martin Luther is truly following a false religion and cannot be saved. Whoever is truly following Buddha and his belly button cannot be saved. But those that follow Christ, they are saved. God knows the hearts. He knows which ones are doing which and which ones are not. But we know the truth, and we must profess the truth and let God judge the souls. Meanwhile, we want the salvation of all souls, and we know that souls can only be saved by the truth. So it's not in the interest of truth for me to tell you that you can still go to heaven if you don't believe in God. Number one, that's a lie. And number two, what benefit does it do? I must tell you the truth. Truth is, new Mass, new church equals bad for your spiritual health. Don't eat it. Don't follow it. Don't believe in it. And so, no need to change the teaching. Also, I heard recently from one of the priests says, you know, Father Pfeiffer, you've gone a new way now. You're going a new way. You've gone away. Now, does that sound familiar? What do they say to all Latin Mass priests? You've gone away from the church. Father Urban Snyder, my old pastor, he was a friend of my old pastor. He died in 1995, Trappist monk. He used to always tell the story about an old farmer, old Kentucky farmer. He used to drive his Model T. Then after they'd been married 50 years, he was driving with his wife in his truck. And the wife said, you know, Harold? He goes, yeah. But you remember how when we were newly married, I used to be sitting right next to you, and you used to be sitting right next to me, and now you're sitting way over there, and I'm sitting way over here. And he said, I haven't moved. That's how Father Urban Snyder used to describe it. I haven't moved. You just slid over. You slid over to the other side of the truck. I haven't moved. One of my parishioners in Colorado used to say that. The bishop told him, when are you going to come back to the church? And he, the old farmer, told the bishop of Denver, he says, you know, I was married in that cathedral over there, Bishop. I was married in the same Mass that I'm going to today. I was baptized in the same church I'm going to today. I don't, tell you the truth, I don't remember leaving. And the bishop, it's nice talking to you, I'm going to go. I don't remember leaving. We didn't leave the church. We didn't leave the doctrine. We didn't leave the sacraments. We didn't leave the faith. We're going the same way. In exactly the same way as our ancestors. Exactly the same way since our baptism. Exactly the same way as the last 2,000 years. Haven't changed. And what do they say? You're going a new way. But why am I going a new way? Because you're not following Bishop Williamson. You're going a new way because you're not following Bishop Fillet. You're going a new way because you're not following the local bishop and the Pope. I'm following Christ, whom they are also supposed to follow. And I'm following in the same way that I have always followed. I don't need to change the way I follow. If they want to go a different way, hasta la vista. Have a nice trip. But we go the same way. And we hope that you come back as soon as possible. Like Father Giselle said to Bishop Tissier back in 2012. He said, you don't do anything until the bishops stand up. And Father Giselle said to Bishop Tissier, he said, you know, Your Excellency, my Lord, when the shepherd doesn't fight against the sheep, the next line of defense is the dogs. When we bark. If you want to join us, we'll be out there. Come whenever you want. And that's the way it is. If the bishop decides to go another way, it's he who's going another way. I'm not going another way. There's no need for me to go another way. We are teaching the same doctrine, condemning the same errors, teaching the same thing, practicing the same rules of Society of St. Pius X, following the statutes of our beloved society and the missionary principle of our society. No need to change. No need to change. So we're not going to change. Just follow the way of our ancestors and remain the same. And if we do change, it's bad for us. Very bad for us. So we don't want to change. We don't want to change. And meanwhile, we don't need to get overly disturbed that there's a conflict. We don't want to get overly disturbed about that. Now, to close here, we don't get overly disturbed that there's a conflict. There's always been a conflict. There's always been a fight. And as it was in the reading the other day, I forget now what to say, just a few days ago in the breviary, that God allows there to be a great struggle in order that we might overcome. In order that we might overcome. It was in the Mass just the other day. God allows there to be a struggle so that we might overcome. He gives us a struggle that we might overcome the struggle. A great struggle that we might greatly overcome it. A small struggle that we might in a small way overcome it. And God allows there to be struggles. So there have always been struggles amongst the saints. There have always been struggles in the church. There will always be struggles until the very end of time. And so therefore we should not be surprised or shocked that we have to also experience a struggle. It's nothing compared to the struggles of our ancestors. But at least it's a struggle. But it's nothing compared to their struggle. So we imitate them and overcome the difficulties. What overcomes it? Our faith. Our faith. And we pray for the conversion of all souls and for everyone to maintain the faith. So, with regard to Bishop Williamson, nothing against Bishop Williamson, but he has chosen to speak another way. So I have to say that's wrong. And people are listening because of the name attached to it, unfortunately. Because he has the name of being the son of Archbishop of Pfeiffer. And they say, well, he can't be wrong because he's the bishop. And now we have this thing, I'm not going to read through this, but the good old Hugh Akins, a good man in Florida, he basically writes that the essential, besides the fact that he mentions all different epitaphs, or what do you call it, statements about Father Pfeiffer, and also Greg Taylor, that, were Pharisees and Sadducees and, in all charity, of course. And, I don't know, there's a whole list. I'm going to read them, but it's just too many. There's all the different things that we are. Why? Because of attacking the good bishop. I'm not attacking the good bishop, I'm attacking the errors that he has chosen to communicate. And the proper thing to consider is that even if I'm mistaken, supposing I believe that he says that new Mass is good. He doesn't really mean that. But if I really believe that he says new Mass is good, and I actually have some text to back it up, I am obliged to condemn it. The worst you could say is, okay, he's mistaken. Father Pfeiffer is mistaken. Bishop Williamson didn't really mean that. Okay, fine. If he didn't mean that, then show us he didn't mean that. This is from the year 2012. There's no change of doctrine. So Father Hugo would say, what does it say here on this April the 14th document? It says, doctrinal declaration. What does that mean? The declaration of doctrine. Really? Yeah, that's what it means. And what does it say? New Mass legitimately promulgated. Vatican II in conformity with tradition. These are doctrines. They're not practical prudential statements. Prudential statements are, we're going to switch from red buttons to purple buttons. This is not about red buttons and purple buttons. This is about doctrine. And it's doctrine. Now, explain to me one non-doctrinal statement in this statement. No, we're not going to talk about it. You're just being judgmental. I don't think it means what you think it means. Did you talk to Bishop Fillet? Well, how about read the document? Well, we must do the same thing now in 2016. Read the documents. Do you agree with them or not? Is the trouble of new Mass that it's ambiguous and can be brought to the good by the good priest and the bad by the bad priest? Is that statement true or false? That's what Bishop Williamson says. It's false. All right. It's false. The new Mass is not ambiguous, it's evil. Cannot be used for the good. Archbishop Lefebvre told us it cannot be used for the good. He spoke the truth when he said that. And when we look at the new Mass, we see the fruits of it. But in any case, so we have to just persevere in the battle. The souls throughout the whole world are reacting in a very similar way to 2012. In a very, very similar way. We want the truth, we want the faith. Priests are reacting in a similar way to 2012. And yes, on a human level, it can seem to be a discouragement that there's a fight amongst us, but it shouldn't be too discouraging. Let's just stand for the truth and stand for the faith. And some of them are confused, some of them maybe don't know what fully was going on. And but nonetheless, we have to stand for the truth. And we have to publicly and clearly stand for the truth, not secretly and silently stand for the truth. So let's make sure that we do that. And, persevere in the battle. I guess it is late, so you better pack it in there. But anybody, any quick questions, whatever, and then we can leave it at that. Is that sufficient? Yeah. Go ahead, yes.
I got an invitation. A very good friend of mine has been raised to see the Diocese of Killaloe.
Oh, where is that? Where is Killaloe? Clare? Okay.
Yeah. And on September 25th, he's consecrated
a bishop.
Yeah, I don't believe so myself. Just my opinion.
Right, probably a good event to miss, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure. Is he a conservative priest or is he kind of a liberal?
No, sort of. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully you can work on him. Try to get them to, because it's true that even now there's priests still trying to come back to tradition, and but they're in ignorance. They don't know, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we say we have to just try to help them get back to tradition. But yeah, it's kind of hard. He's going to be the new bishop or auxiliary bishop.
The bishop, yeah. He's been the secretary to the Tune Archbishop Neary. He was a sculpture scholar. The Q theory and all that stuff, you know.
I see.
But he's got a very good nature. I know him. He's a very charitable man.
Right. Well, I hope we can work on it. Maybe we can try to tell him, say the Latin Mass. Get rid of try to say the Latin Mass, and tell him to persevere in the truth and reread his catechism, and then hopefully we can drag him in. But once they become bishops, they get so tied into that political world. It's pretty hard. Yeah.
He had cancer some years ago as well.
But maybe let's just pack it in and say a quick prayer here. I just have to. Yes.
Tonight I feel as if I was living in the time of St. Patrick.
All right. That's good. All right.
Things have not changed.
Yes,
Because
that's right.
of divine.
Yes.
The things of man changes daily.
Yeah. Right.
And thank God that for me tonight, you have brought the same gospel it was shown on Calvary. The same Mass, it can't be changed. And thank God, and I say to you tonight, welcome home to Ireland.
Yes, my fellow Irishman.
My fellow Irish,
Yeah.
my fellow American.
The fellow American. Let Padre Kenny, you're going to show the picture of him there. The hero of Ireland. Okay.
Sorry, you put the whole thing into context.
Yes.
Like all these troubles and all this nonsense, right?
Yes.
And not just basically, as they say here in football, don't take your eye off the ball, just focus on what is important, right?
Yeah, that's
Forget
right.
about the personalities.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, they're all weak human beings.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, in the present situation where some people are saying, don't go to Father Pfeiffer's Mass, okay, I don't think they should say that, it would hurt me. But not really. But at the same time, they shouldn't really be saying that. But I wouldn't worry about it either. So long as they're standing for the truth, that they have a little dispute with somebody, I wouldn't worry about it. Like I told the people in Asia, for instance, Father Pico and Father Giselle, they're saying don't go to my Mass. But that's just because they're upset and they feel like they have to do that. I think the word feel, not think, but feel. They feel like they have to do that in order to show their support of Bishop Williamson. So they're saying, stay away from Father Pfeiffer, don't go to his Mass, don't receive him in your house, reject him, kick him out, and so on. But that's no reason to abandon them. They're still holding the truth, they're still teaching the truth, they're still holding the faith. So I told the faithful, you keep persevering with them, keep supporting them.
They mightn't actually believe what they said. It might be for public consumption.
Yeah, that's correct. Remember, there's a lot of pressure, but at least they're not teaching. See, it's not like the 2012 crisis in that you have an official change of doctrine. They haven't changed their doctrine. They haven't changed their faith. And so I wouldn't be concerned about it too much. I mean, it's unfortunate that, that these things happen. But remember also, we're all human beings, and there's going to be difficulties and conflicts amongst us. But the human conflicts we shouldn't be too concerned about. They're part of the development of the soul anyway.
Right. The last question, do you think this agreement is going to be signed with Rome? It's mentally signed anyway, right?
I just think they're going to drag it on and on and on and on and on forever. I mean, I would love them to sign it, but I personally believe they're just going to drag it on and on and on. I mean, look, it's already been 17 years. Bishop Flay has been waiting for this. He talked in 2001. Pope John Paul II is dying. We've got to sign this deal right away. It's urgent.
Yes.
Now we have got urgent Pope number 1 dies. Urgent Pope number 2 resigns and is watching the soccer on TV. Urgent Pope number 3, and when he decides to die or whatever, we'll have urgent Pope number 4. And meanwhile, Bishop Flay will probably be talking about this when he's 162. It's urgent. I mean, I don't think it'll ever happen. I hope it does to get it out of the way and get it over with, but I don't think it will. Yeah.
But may I ask, the genesis of the split from the society, was Bishop Williamson the leader as such of it?
No.
That's what's his beef?
No, that's one of those $64,000 questions, as they say.
He's only a bishop. That's a big thing,
Well, I mean, he's the son of Archbishop Lefebvre, so he's expected to communicate to others what Archbishop Lefebvre communicated, which is the Catholic truth.
No, I mean, what is his beef with, what's his angle,
Okay, what he himself says is,
I think
he thinks that structure is a big mistake because it led to the corruption.
But he speaks in metaphors, he doesn't speak in...
He's true. He used to speak clearly. Now you speak, you read, and you get a bit of a headache.
Yeah,
Yeah. You know, like in the last lesson comments, he says Novus Ordo Mass, and then he doesn't talk about the Novus Ordo Mass.
like that piece from that piece that was handed out that you were speaking, Guy in Florida. It's incoherent.
Oh, you mean this?
Yeah.
The thing about poor Mr. Hugh Higgins?
It's incoherent.
Well, he's writing with his heart, I think. It is incoherent, but I think that's because he's thinking with his heart rather than his head. And also there's this feeling that we can't be Catholic unless we're connected visibly to a bishop who approves of us. And that's an error.
Yeah.
And that since, see, my bishop is the bishop of the Diocese of Dublin right now. And the bishop of Rome, who doesn't even know that he's the Pope. So now the bishop of Rome, the Pope, and the bishop of the diocese, that's my bishop. And Bishop Fillet is my superior only as an elected superior, not as a bishop. Those are my superiors.
Yeah.
So, but when you believe that you have to have a visible bishop approving of you, that's an error.
Yeah.
It's an error. So what's happened is even the priests are saying, I've got to have a bishop. We had Bishop Fillet before, and they forgot, we learned in the seminary, Bishop Fillet is not my bishop. I learned that in the seminary. Of course, he wasn't the superior when I was in the seminary, it was Father Schmidberger, but at the same time, Bishop Fillet is not my bishop. Archbishop Lefebvre is not my bishop. He was still alive when I entered the seminary. Archbishop Lefebvre is not my bishop. We learned that in the seminary. He's the founder of the Society of St. Pius X. He is a consecrated bishop. He has the power to ordain. He has the power to confirm. He's not my bishop.
Yeah.
My bishop is the one designated by God through the church, who's the bishop of the diocese and the bishop of Rome. Now, this is one of the errors we're dealing with in the resistance right now. I've got to have a bishop. Who is your bishop? Who is your bishop? This is one of the complaints against Father Pfeiffer, against myself. Who's your superior? My superior is the Pope, Bishop of the Diocese, Bishop Fillet. What are you doing with him? I'm disobeying him. You know, Italian, Jewish background. What do you do? Disobey. I'm disobeying him. Why am I disobeying him? Because they are teaching another error, another doctrine. When they straighten out, I'm back to obeying them. No problem. In fact, I am obeying them by disobeying them because that's what the virtue of obedience requires me to do. It isn't that complicated.
We have a terrible thing in the Dublin diocese now. Jim Martin, the Archbishop, has approved that matter is they do abortions now. The matter is a cardiac hospital.
Yes.
And he's in charge. So he's got blood, you know, in his hands.
Right. Yeah, it's just getting worse and worse. They're piling new scandals upon scandals. They're running out of scandals of what they're doing. They're just piling them one on top of another.
Yeah.
You know, that's what's really
Well,
happening.
you can't, how do you fight that? Like, they're hidden in the bowels of what appears to
Well, that's the false trap. Don't enter into their, you know, into their domain. It's like the what do you call it? If you don't enter into the swamp, what do you call that? That you sink into quicksand. You don't enter into the quicksand to pull someone else out of the quicksand. All that happens is you both go down. You have to stay out of the quicksand and put a little rope inside or a vine and pull the guy out, but you can't enter the quicksand. And what they're trying to say is get inside and really help the people. It's like jumping inside of a spider nest and rolling around. It's not a good idea. What you have to do is you have to stay away from it, maybe take some scissors and cut it, but you don't jump in it and roll around. You don't jump inside of the quicksand. You don't do that. You know, but yes, technically.
Just one thing, Father. If you don't stick with the bishop, there'll be no holy oils and there'll be no...
Oh, no. I've got holy oils, by the way, because there's always criminals out there that aren't moral. Right?
What I'm saying is, you know, are the sacraments being used as weapons?
They are being used as weapons. They are being used as weapons. And like I've got holy oils.
Yeah.
Because priests have secretly given me the holy oils.
Yeah.
But also I do like Father Hanneman, my old Irish pastor. He keeps holy oils for like 50 years. We keep all the holy oils. We've got the holy oils for the last, couple generations. And then we've got holy oils, so we keep them and we can still use them. But it's true that God will provide the bishop, and generally the bishop comes when needed. So that when our young seminarians, if they survive, and they're ready to be ordained priests, God will provide the bishop. And it might be Bishop Williamson, it might be Bishop Fillet, we don't know. And but God will provide. We just have to stand firm to the faith. I think it's just a little test You know, are you going to give up your faith in order to get a priest? We've already got 60,000, or excuse me, a couple 100,000 priests that don't have the faith. There's plenty of them out there. We don't need another one.
Yeah.
We need priests who have the faith. And they don't have to be all that wise. I mean, they have to have a minimal knowledge, but they don't have to be that wise. They have to have faith. And part of what we're being asked to have a little test of faith. Teach them the truth, follow the rules of society, and give them the truth, and God will provide the bishop. He'll provide the bishop. But it's true. That's one of the main. It's true that that's one of the main attacks against us. Where's your bishop?
It's a particularly nasty thing to do, to use the sacraments as a weapon, considering
Yes.
the sacraments are not theirs.
That is true. And again, it's a repetition of 2012, right? And guess what's happening now with Bishop Fillet is refusing to ordain the priests of Morgon.
Yeah, we see it's a weapon, then, isn't it?
You know, even though it's a crude way of saying it, it's just SSDD. It's all over again. And so, you know, that it's the, we don't, and again, they're saying I'm judgmental, but I'm not refusing anyone Holy Communion. I'm not refusing the sacraments. I'm not telling people, for instance, even with regard to the mainstream society, I tell you, I don't recommend you go to the society. I think it's dangerous, and I give you the reasons why, you know, compromise, etc. But if you go, I'm not angry. If you go, I'm not going to punish you. If you go, I'm not going to threaten you. And if you need the sacraments, I'm going to give it to you. That's what's going to happen if I'm able to. You call me to come and anoint you, I'm not going to check your credentials. You know, retina scan, a background check. I'm not going to do that. So we're just going to come and give you the sacraments. You know, if we're able to come, we're coming. And not going to do any background checks or, credential checks, see whether you're going to the right Mass every day and how many times you went, whether you're a registered parishioner and whether you're a real part of the resistance. I don't care about that. Right? So, you know, we're just going to follow the practice of our fathers, you know, give the sacraments. And yet they're accusing me of being the judgmental one, condemning everyone, refusing to work with everyone. I'm traveling around the world as I was before, visiting the priests, visiting the faithful, trying to encourage people to stay together as much as possible, find any priest we can to be able to help, to come back to the Latin Mass if they're in the Novus Mass, to exit the mainstream society of St. Pius X, where it's a danger to their souls, and bring them into the resistance where they need to be, to continue to be faithful to Archbishop Lefebvre. This is our opportunity to imitate our founder. He stood up against all the bishops. And he stood up against the whole church. The whole visible church. Not the real church, of course. He stood up. It's now our opportunity to imitate our founder. That's a great goal. That's a great, gift. So when Father Giselle and I received their expulsion papers in 2012, you know, we had a big celebration. That's for our glory. You know, I remember Father Salvador handed me, this is your expulsion, you had it coming. Oh, great, thanks. You know, he was the one that was depressed. And then when Father Giselle got it, we should have had the camera, my goodness. And he was singing and, it was just, we had a big celebration. Invited the guy who gave us the expulsion papers to join in our celebration. And since he was a Filipino guy and you don't miss out on fiestas, he figured, well, okay, I guess I can celebrate. So we came and celebrated, and so but the thing is that, this is a blessing, not a curse, it's a blessing. And so meanwhile, we just have to persevere, and that's not possible without prayer of the faithful, without the support of souls, and it's not possible without the special grace of God. But with the grace of God, we're fine. We have to persevere,
Why are the other resistant priests not going along with your thinking, Father?
Oh, many of them are, but they're being quiet. Some are not being quiet.
That's not helpful.
Remember, some are not being quiet. Remember, some are speaking out. Whereas because one of the challenges we have is that in the many of the priests, some of them have health problems, and some of them they really can't, they can't travel, they can't do the things that Father Giselle and I are doing, going around and all that, and Father McDonald, and so they're saying that, look, this is wrong, Even Father McDonald is saying, look, the Bishop Williamson's wrong when he said blah,
So
blah,
they all
blah.
agree that he's
So
wrong.
they don't all agree, but the thing is, it would be better if they said it a little more publicly, for instance. But some of them are saying that they're faithful, making it clear. Father Cardozo's made it abundantly clear, right, to the faithful in South America. Father Genzi the same. Father Jackman's made it very clear. I have, Father Hugo, and some of the other priests have made it clear to their faithful, but then many are afraid to speak out too publicly because if they see what happens, you see, you're going to be cut off, right? You're going to get the treatment, right?
But what about the other two bishops? They don't speak out either.
The other two bishops are just following. They're like in fact, what you have is Bishop Williamson is like the metropolitan.
He didn't want
And the other two bishops are his auxiliary bishops. And they just simply are the mouthpieces of him. And so they don't have authority on their own. Now in theory, all three of them are just auxiliary bishops. They're just auxiliary bishops. They're bishops, which of course we need, but their duty is to confirm and to ordain. But they don't have authority as bishops. They're just auxiliary bishops. They're not really part of the Ecclesia Docens. They're not part of the Ecclesia Docens, the church teaching. They're not the bishops designated by heaven to be the bishops of dioceses. Their job is to fulfill the role of providing the priests and providing the confirmed, and also the priests of faith, which as priests they're obliged to preach, but now that they're bishops, they have a more grave obligation to preach that faith. They have.
Surely if there's an error, they would speak out against that.
Well, so far they haven't.
Especially as a bishop.
Yes, but again, so far they haven't. So, Bishop Ford has said, I listened to him myself talk about the miracles of the new Mass. He agrees in the miracles of the new Mass. Bishop Thomas Aquinas put it in writing. He put it in writing that, there's grace coming from the new Mass because, my friends went there and they had to benefit from it. Remember the letter that he wrote,
yes.
and that there can be miracles. The miracles don't mean the new Mass is good, and he tried to justify Bishop Williamson, and he had to do that before he got consecrated to bishop. He was still Father Thomas Aquinas when he wrote that. Had he not written that,
Gun to his head.
he probably wouldn't be Bishop Thomas Aquinas. So, you see, that was required before he became bishop. And he also wrote a letter that Father Pfeiffer and Father Hugo cannot participate in his consecration ceremony because they criticized Bishop Williamson and cannot come afterwards.
You have to sing off the same hymn sheet in order to be part of the party, basically.
Yes. So it's become like a human thing. And again, this happened before. Paul VI, you must follow him. The local bishop, you must follow him. Bishop Valet, you must follow him. Bishop Williamson, you must follow him. It's the same thing.
And why do you think Bishop Williamson has taken this tack?
Oh, I don't know. He might really believe it.
Years ago to now, it's unbelievable.
Well, you see, again, years ago he was within the Society of St. Pius X, and when we saw Bishop Williamson, what we actually saw was the son of Archbishop Lefebvre. We were looking at Archbishop Lefebvre, and he was just simply the continuation. We weren't looking at him as him. We were looking at him as member of the Society of St. Pius X and as son of Archbishop Lefebvre. Now he just stands on his own, and we see him as him. And so, unfortunately, he's not communicating the truth.
Is it purposely done, or is it he's just going?
Well, he certainly seems to be very sincere in his teaching. He's very adamant about.
He thinks that now.
He keeps repeating it, doesn't he? Either he's a liar or he's not. So if he's a liar, then okay, then maybe he's a liar. But if he's not a liar, I don't think he's a liar. If he's not a liar, then he believes what he says, and what he says is consistently. What he says precisely is the new Mass is ambiguous, and as ambiguous, it can be used for good or bad. It tends to the bad by itself. So say it's 2/3 bad, 1/3 good, and you could use it for the good, you see. And then he says the same thing, he's been saying the same thing about the other things as well. If you believe, you must follow your conscience, which is like a half-truth. You must follow your conscience. And that if you feel the new Mass benefits you, it does. If you feel the Significatus Mass benefits you, it does. If you feel that the Latin Mass in the Church benefits you, it does. And the consequence is if you feel that, smoking pot benefits you, and you worship the god, I forget his name, Father Giselle has the name of the god, there's a pot smoking god in India. He's a pretty cool god, he's got his doobie. And the priests are not deep thinkers, but they're interesting. The priests sit on top of a mountain.